One of the most important questions I often ask myself lately, apart from whether I'm going on the right path that God has chosen for me, and whether I'm a good father or a good husband, is why it is that is important, why it is that we read. I know this might sound like a trivial question to some or to many people. I mean, as opposed to why and who we should vote for, why should we concern ourselves with reading? Why it is and how it is that we're supposed to distribute wealth and charity? Why must we concern ourselves with reading at all? But I genuinely think that reading is absolutely crucial for society. If we are to ever answer any of these questions, we must consider what reading actually is. Some have claimed that reading is important because it helps the fast and comprehensive acquisition of information. And some have also said it delimits perspectives and enriches our lives. I somewhat agree with the second notion. Actually, I do a lot. But in this case, I would like for us to actually clearly define or try to understand what it means to actually read, because I think it's an important element of any society, culture. So just like with anything, especially that which requires some form of thinking and intellectualizing, we will try to define what reading is. And according to a quick Google search, reading is a cognitive process of decoding symbols to arrive at meaning. That for me is a bit shallow. I don't know about you, but that definition does not get to the heart of the matter, or rather it does not explain what reading is. In this short essay, I will attempt to explore the depth and meaning of the process of reading, or in fact just the meaning of reading. In my opinion, this is something that we overlook. At best, we only just glance at, because to read in this way, to read just for the sake of decoding symbols, just to arrive at meaning, somehow takes away thought. Somehow this process, somehow this thing takes away thought, thus making the reader irrelevant, erasing the reader altogether from the dialogue which is meant to take place between the reader and the author. This is essentially text reading itself, and this somehow just interrupts the meaning of the text. I remember when I was still in school, I had never concerned myself with actually wrestling with the text that was given to us for reading. It was just a matter of providing the right answers in the exact format and sequence that the teacher required. I mean, talk about being irrelevant in the entire process, in the entire exercise. I realize now that I cannot blame my poor teachers, but then again, maybe I could. They should have known better, but maybe I wasn't listening because because really I was not a particularly bright student. But the fact remains that we were not carefully taught how to read. We were not able to disagree or challenge the text, effectively inspiring true understanding in ourselves. Ours was to just give good responses according to the teacher's requirements. Ours was not to reason why. This shameful practice, after these many years, has come back to haunt me because of this bad habit of merely reciting. Many texts, many meaningful texts, have passed right through me without disturbing the furniture. Not even a single grain of dust on the drawers. They have left me unchanged, and I wish somehow that I could rectify this. I wish I could go back and try to relive the experience of being a student. It hurts when I think about it because I'm actually fond of reading. That's why I am bothered with understanding the actual meaning of the author and the text over and above volume of text. I need the juice of the text, the marrow of its being. But I recognize that it might be a fool's errand, a meaningless quest. Perhaps because there's absolutely no way we can actually have definitive meaning of the text or understand the definitive meaning of the text. Even the subject of our reason might not mean what we want it to mean. Some recent philosophers have made the point that we could never understand this. We could never truly grasp the meaning of a text. In truth, although my intellect comes nowhere near this, my matchstick of intelligence and talent can't outshine their brilliance. I think they've read themselves stupid. Something in me tells me that they are wrong. dead wrong. Even history refutes their conclusions. History clearly shows that we can read and grasp meaning. I mean, that's the reason why we can rebuild houses. That's the reason why we somehow always find a way to build cultures in and around texts. But this might not be to the satisfaction of the text or even the author, what we grasp, what we come to understand. But that is bound to happen, because we must necessarily come to different conclusions on a lot of issues. This is mainly because we are individuals, and each of us is uniquely made in the image of God. But it's the endeavoring that gets us closer and closer to seeing what the author saw and smelling the scents he smelled. This is achieved by reading and thinking, unfortunately. And how we think is by, of course, concentrating on the subject at hand and also writing down what we are thinking about. Writing will act as a communication device between the author and the reader. That's why I encourage writing. And anyone that wants to read must also write. Schopenhauer once wrote in his short essay on reading and books that the fact that thoughts are reduced to paper are generally nothing more than the footprints of a man walking in the sand. It is true that we see the path that he has taken, but to know what he saw on the way, we must use our own eyes. End quote. That is why writing in our own words, in our own frame of reference, is very important. In short, we read when we think clearly about what we've read. What Schopenhauer was considering here, albeit implicitly, when he wrote that, I think he had in mind the 3 stages of the reading process. Pre-reading is when we skim through the text, reading the synopsis, the blurb, or the prologue or preface, or hearing from a friend what the book or essay or poem is about. Perhaps reading an introduction too, but these are sometimes found redundant, as they often mean to influence the reader. But that's just my opinion. I only read them at the very end. After I had read the text, after I had read the book, will I go back to the introduction. Only if I really have to. During reading is another stage. Is the active engagement with the text being read as defined above. It is the actual reading process where we decode symbols. After reading, this is where the crux is. Now we come to see with our own eyes. We must think clearly and thoroughly about what we've just read. And this must be primarily an independent process, accompanied by a pencil, of course, and a sheet of willing paper, because we must draw conclusions from our own frame of reference, our own conclusions about the text. So this solicits understanding. This comes to a point where now you wrestle with the text. And so now that you can read that deeply, you can probably come to disagree with the text or agree with it, but then you'll be doing so on the merit of your own thoughts and set of conclusions. If we didn't come to this, we couldn't possibly do that. If we couldn't come to a clear reading process, we couldn't possibly disagree or agree with the author or with the text itself. We couldn't wrestle with it. But neither state is permanent, really. So when you read a text, do not think that once you've agreed with it, you could never change your position. You can always do so. Now, just to go back to the meaning of reading, just another search on Google. It says that reading entails scanning the words and symbols, but actively decoding the symbols, especially the syntax and context, and questioning and analyzing and drawing conclusions. This I agree with, definitely. I agree with. So for me, reading is an interactive process where the reader and author conspire to bring understanding to each other.